that poverty is not a disability, and that programs that we need to put in place should help transition people, not make them dependent. And we were able to get 70 votes in the United States Senate, including 17 Democrats.
Governor Huntsman, this question of if the leader of the Democrats promised to make you a one-term president, how would you go about dealing with them in a more effective way than you think the man you served, President Obama, did?
I think it comes down to one word, David, and I think the one word is trust. When the American people look at the political process play out, they hear all the spinning and all the doctrinaire language, and they still walk away with the belief that they're not being represented in Congress, that there's no trust in the executive branch. I mean, Simpson-Bowles' bipartisan proposal lands right on the desk of Barack Obama, and it lands in the garbage can. The first press conference I had when I ran for governor in 2004 was on ethics in government service. I talked about term limits. I talked about campaign finance reform. I talked about the role of lobbyists and knew I would make a lot of friends. I had one member of the legislature who supported me in that run. We won because we had the will of the people. And I believe the next president, and if that is to be me, I want to roam around this country and I want to generate the level of excitement and enthusiasm that I know exists among the American people to bring term limits to Congress, to close the revolving door on members going right on out and becoming a lobbyist. We've got to start with the structural problems. There is no trust.
All right. Governor Perry, I want to continue on the theme of leadership.
We need to.
This is, as you well know, New Hampshire is an independent place. And I wonder where, besides criticizing the previous administration for running up the debt, I wonder where you would buck your party. What would you say or do to make Republicans uncomfortable?
I hope I'm making Republicans uncomfortable right now by talking about the spending that they've done back in the 2000s when we had control of both parties.
But aside from that, I just mentioned that.
Well, listen, Dr. Paul says that the biggest problem facing this country is our work overseas. I disagree with that. The biggest problem facing this country today is a Congress that is out of control with their spending. And we've got to have someone, an outsider, that will walk in, not part of the insider group that you see here, people who have voted for raising the debt limit, people who have been part of the problem that is facing America. I will tell you two things that can occur that a president can lead the charge on, and it will put term limits into place. One of those is a part-time Congress to tell those members of Congress, we're going to cut your pay, we're going to cut the amount of time that you spend in Washington, D.C., send you back to your district so you can have a job like everybody else in your district has and live under the laws of which you pass, and then a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution.
Governor, my question,
do those two things,
my question, sir, was
that will make them uncomfortable.
You think telling conservatives a balanced budget amendment is something I'm going to do and I'm going to cut spending? That's going to make them uncomfortable?
You darn right, because there's a bunch of people standing up here that say they're conservatives, but their records don't follow up on that.
All right, I got to take another break here. We'll come back. We'll come back on this point. Another quick break here. We'll return with much more. And, of course, please share your thoughts with us online via Facebook at mtp.msnbc.com.
NBC News Facebook Republican presidential candidates debate continues in partnership with the New Hampshire Union Leader.
And we are back in New Hampshire. I'm happy to be joined now by our local partners for the debate from the New Hampshire Union Leader. Senior political reporter John DeStazo is with us. Good to have you here, John. And from WHDH, we had this problem yesterday, TV in Boston, Channel 7 in Boston, political editor Andy Hiller. Welcome to you as well. Glad to have you both. John, get us started.
All right, Governor Huntsman, it's winter in New Hampshire. It's a little mild, but it's still winter. Home heating oil is nearly $4 a gallon. Yet President Obama and Congress have cut by 25% the program that helps low-income people heat their homes. About 1 million households that were helped last year won't be helped this year. Is this an example of pain that must be suffered? Should this program funding be restored? Should it be cut more? Should this program be eliminated, perhaps? Where does this fit in? This is a practical problem in this area of the country.
No, we have people in need. We have people suffering, and this is a challenge that we need to address. But I believe we're not going to be able to effectively confront it head on until such time as this nation begins to move more toward greater energy diversity and energy independence. One of the first things I would do as president is I would take a look at that one product distribution bias that always favors one product, and that's oil. And I'd say if we're going to do what this nation needs to be done in terms of using a multiplicity of products that we have in such diversity and abundance and get them to the customers, we're going to have to break up that one product distribution monopoly. And I want to do to that oil distribution monopoly what we did to broadcast communication in the early 1970s. We blew it apart. We went to the Federal Trade Commission and said, we need more. We need diverse sources to draw from. We need to service the consumers. I believe if we're going to do it, it needs to be done from an energy independent standpoint. All products, getting the products to the customer, we've got to disrupt that one product monopoly that does not serve this country well, nor its consumers.
Congressman Paul, how do you feel about subsidies in general for specific energy, and also, though, more specifically right now, more immediately, this low-income program, heating assistance program? Is this something that fits in under your view of what government does do or should not do?
Well, subsidies per se are it's bad economic policy, it's bad moral policy, because it's using government force to transfer money from one group to another, and economically it does a lot of harm. But when it comes to energy, we should deregulate it like others talk about. But we need to talk supply and demand. Everybody knows about supply and demand. They talk about oil, and if we had more alternative sources, that we always hope the prices will go down. But everybody forgets that there's 50% of a transaction is the monetary unit, and you don't deal. Very few people talk about the supply and demand of money. And when you create a lot of money, prices go up. So it goes up in the areas where government most gets involved, in education and medical care, housing, and in energy. So prices go up much faster than any other place. So if you subsidize somebody and you print money to do it, you compound the problem. It's good politics. Yeah, I'm going to subsidize you and take care of you, but it's bad economic policy, and it's not a good way to find any answers.
Governor Romney, this is such an important topic because beyond the regional implication, there's also a larger question about the social safety net. You talk all the time about opportunity for Americans, but what about Americans left behind? In this age of austerity, what do Americans have to learn to live with less of?
Well, what we don't need is to have a federal government saying we're going to solve all the problems of poverty across the entire country. Because what it means to be poor in Massachusetts is different than Montana and Mississippi and other places of the country. And that's why these programs, all these federal programs that are bundled to help people and make sure we have a safety net, need to be brought together and sent back to the states. And let states that are closest to the needs of their own people craft the programs that are able to deal with the needs of those folks. So whether it's food stamps and housing vouchers, they're certainly on the list, but certainly Medicaid, home heating oil support. What unfortunately happens is with all the multiplicity of federal programs, you have massive overhead with government bureaucrats in Washington administering all these programs, very little of the money that's actually needed by those that really need help, those that can't care for themselves, actually reaches them. The government folks in Washington keep building program after program. It's time to say enough of that. Let's get the money back to the states the way the Constitution intended, and let states care for their own people in the way they feel best.
Andy Hiller.
Governor Romney, I'd like to remind you of something you said in Bay Windows, which is a gay newspaper in Massachusetts, in 1994 when you were running against Senator Kennedy. These are your words. I think the gay community needs more support from the Republican Party, and I would be a voice in the Republican Party to foster anti-discrimination efforts. How have you stood up for gay rights, and when have you used your voice to influence Republicans on this issue?
Andy, as you know, I don't discriminate. And in the appointments that I made when I was governor of Massachusetts, a member of my cabinet was gay. I appointed people to the bench regardless of their sexual orientation. I made it very clear that in my view we should not discriminate in hiring policies, in legal policies. At the same time, from the very beginning in 1994, I said to the gay community, I do not favor same-sex marriage. I oppose same-sex marriage, and that has been my view. But if people are looking for someone who will discriminate against gays or will in any way try and suggest that people that have different sexual orientation don't have full rights in this country, they won't find that in me.
When's the last time you stood up and spoke out for increasing gay rights?
Right now.
Senator Santorum, would you be a voice for increasing gay rights in the party?
Surprised it's coming to me. What? What was your question?
Would you be a voice for speaking out for gay rights in your party? And if not, why not?
I would be a voice in speaking out for making sure that every person in America, gay or straight, is treated with respect and dignity and has the equality of opportunity. That does not mean that I would agree with certain things that the gay community would like to do to change laws with respect to marriage or respect to adoption and things like that. So you can be respectful. This is the beautiful thing about this country. James Madison called the First Amendment, he called it the perfect remedy. And that is people of all different backgrounds, diversity, opinions, faith, can come into the public square and can be heard. And can be heard in a way that's respectful of everybody else. But just because you don't agree with someone's desire to change the law doesn't mean you don't like them or you hate them or you want to discriminate against them. But you're trying to promote things, promote things that you think are best for society. And I do so, and I think if you watch the town hall meetings that I've been doing all over New Hampshire, I do so in a respectful tone. I listen to the other side. I let them make their arguments, and then we do so in a very respectful way. And you know what? We may not agree. That's why we leave it open to the public to be able to elect members of Congress and the Senate and the President who support their ideas.
What if you had a son who came to you and said he was gay?
I would love him as much as I did the second before he said it. And I would try to do everything I can to be as good a father to him as possible.
Governor Perry, we're going to move on. Right to work, which outlaws mandatory union membership, as you know, continues to be a major issue in the state of New Hampshire. You've spoken about promoting having states pass state laws. What about on the federal level? Do you see this as a federal issue and one that you would promote as president? Or is it a state
Actually,
by
it
state?
is a federal issue, and it's a federal issue because of the law that was passed that forces the states to make the decision about whether or not they're going to be right to work. So Jim DeMint's legislation, I would support that, of repealing that legislation that forces states to make that decision to be a right to work rather than all of this country being right to work. Listen, I'm not anti-union. I'm pro-job. And the way you promote this country's rehabilitation from the Obama administration's attack on job creation is by taxes and regulation, particularly the regulatory side, and pulling those regulations that have gone forward over the course of the last since 2008 and test them all for, do they create jobs or do they kill jobs? And if they kill jobs, you throw them out. That will make more difference in this country from the standpoint. I'm a right-to-work guy. I come from a right-to-work state, and I will tell you, if New Hampshire wants to become the magnet for job creation in the Northeast, you pass that right-to-work legislation in this state.
I'd like to ask both Governor Romney quickly and Senator Santorum quickly, what positive contributions do labor unions provide in this country at this point in the 21st century?
Well, the Carpenters Union, for instance, trains their workers to be more effective on the job, and when they compete against non-union workers, why they do that on a fair basis. If that happens, that's a positive contribution. But let me just say this with regards to unions. I agree with Governor Perry. Right-to-work legislation makes a lot of sense for New Hampshire and for the nation. But also, let's not forget the government unions and the impact they're having. If we're going to finally pull back the extraordinary political power government unions are exerting in this country, we're going to have to say that people who work for the government workers, should have their compensation tied to that which exists in the private sector. People who are government servants, public servants, should not be paid more than the taxpayers who are caring for them.
Governor, can I just, very quickly, Senator, because we're about to hit a hard break, a quick comment on this?
Yeah, I will. I've signed a pledge that I would would support a national right to work. When I was it was mentioned this last night, when I was a senator from Pennsylvania, I didn't vote for it because Pennsylvania is not a right to work state, and I didn't want to vote for a law that would change the law in Pennsylvania, number one. Number two, what can unions do? As Mitt mentioned, they can do training. They also do a lot in the community. I work with a lot of labor unions in Philadelphia and other places to do a lot of community involvement work, and they try to participate as good members of the community like a business does.
I got to cut you off. I apologize. We have a mandatory break. We'll be back with more questions in just a moment. We have come to the end of our first hour of this NBC News Facebook debate here in New Hampshire. A few NBC stations may be leaving us now, but for most of you and everyone watching live on MSNBC and online, please stay tuned.